The problem is we have a banking system that has overtaken our government. It's overtaken every aspect of our life. It's overtaken the world, and it's not American. It's not constitutional at all.
If you've noticed, I've been wearing this t-shirt for a few episodes now. I have them available on eBay. Check out the links below to get your size. Doesn't dinner sound great as it's cooking? This dinner is from Riverbend Ranch, which always provides prime or high choice. Has never been given hormones, never been given antibiotics, never been given mRNA vaccines. It's raised in the USA. It's processed in the USA. In fact, it's fully vertically integrated, which means that they own the cow that gives birth to the calf that's raised on their fields and then taken to their butcher and then shipped to you. And if we compare what we can buy from Riverbend Ranch to 4 other major steak companies that sell bundles that have ribeyes and other meat in it, it can be as much as $184 to $59 less expensive. It's a great price value, and it's a delicious piece of meat. Check out mycleanbeef.com/after-hours. That's mycleanbeef.com/after-hours. mycleanbeef.com/after-hours.
Welcome to After Hours with Dr. Sigoloff. On this podcast, you will be encouraged to question everything and to have the courage to stand for the truth. And now, to your host, Dr. Sigoloff.
I want to thank you for joining me again. I first want to give a shout out to Too Tough giving $30 a month. I want to give a shout out to the anonymous family donor giving $20.20 a month. We have the Plandemic Reprimando level at $17.76 a month with Ty, Charles, Stanley, Dr. Anna, Frank, Brian, Shell, Brantley, Gary, and Janine. We have Kevin and Pat and Bev giving $10 a month. We have the Refine Not Burn level with Linda, Emmy, Joe, Rebecca, Marcus, Elizabeth, Dawn, Ken, Rick, Mary, Amanda, and Sandy. Addison Mulder's giving $3 a month, and Frank is giving $1.50. And then we have The Courage is Contagious with $1 a month with Jay, Spesnasty, Darrell, Susan, BB King, Caleb, and Sharon. I want to thank you all so much for helping support my Patreon. This is what helps keep this podcast going. Also, check out mycleanbeef.com/after-hours. That's mycleanbeef.com/after-hours. It's some of the best beef I've ever tasted. That's mycleanbeef.com/after-hours. So my next guest, today we're having on Bitsader. He goes by Jay. He knows a lot about Bitcoin. And he's here to share with us what he believes Bitcoin is going to do in the future and why Bitcoin? Why is it a good thing to have? Why is it a good thing to know about? Jay, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Sam. It's great to be on. We talked about this for a long time. I'm glad to finally be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So when we first talked about Bitcoin, you had mentioned that you feel that this is the best true money out there, that this is a way to have even weights and scales. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny about this whole thing. There's so much to talk about. I had no idea how we're going to start this conversation, but that's a fair one to do it. A fair idea. The problem, you might ask me, like, why would anybody want to use Bitcoin? And the short answer of it is the money we use right now is really bad. It is really corrupt. If you don't know already, it's highly inflationary, and regular people are losing purchasing power all the time. They're losing their privacy. They're being surveilled. And Bitcoin gives us an opportunity to take some of that sovereignty back. And you mentioned like equal weights and measures, and that actually, that's not my idea. That comes from a pastor I follow on Twitter, and I've got his book here. I think I gave you a copy of it, The Bible and Bitcoin. It's fantastic, but he argues that money it should be an honest scale, honest weights and measures. It's that's what the Lord desires us to use for trade. That is what God's monetary policy is. And the money we have today is not that. The dollars we use, they're a melting ice cube. You've got purchasing power, and it's reduced every year. And in the last few years, it just gets worse constantly. And it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. The government's telling you or that they want 2% inflation, but you go to McDonald's, you try and buy a house, these kind of things, that they're not telling the truth. So Bitcoin is a solution for that, one solution. But we can talk about gold, we can talk about silver, we can talk about Bitcoin, we can talk about the point of life, whatever you want to talk about. But where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, so can you explain how Bitcoin works? Because I think a lot of people are unwilling to venture into it because they have no idea what it is.
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons for people to be skeptical or resistant to the idea of Bitcoin, and I fully understand that. It is not easy in the beginning. So the thing of it is a deflationary currency, and the thing that makes it beautiful is who controls it. And the people that control it is people like you and me. We got like volunteers all over the world, not just volunteers, just people that are really interested in it. And you could run it. I can run it. I do run it. It's actually running here behind me on a node. In fact, if you look right here at the screen, that is Bitcoin code running in the background. Kind of looks like the Matrix. And basically, a lot of people have heard of blockchain, and you can see this on the screen behind me here as well. But there's only 21 million coins that can ever exist. And they're not all out yet, and they won't all be mined until 2140, almost over 100 years from now, before the last ones are mined. Most of them are out there right now, but it's very different than the fiat currency that we're using today, which they're printing millions almost like by the second, and all that money that they're printing is debt. It's national debt, and they print it from nothing. They give it to us to use, and we have to pay it all back with interest. And where does that interest come from? They print more money. So Bitcoin is an escape to get us away from all that. And you could say it's digital gold. A lot of people like to call it digital gold. It's a little different. I think it's way better than gold in a lot of ways, and I would love to talk about that. I am a gold bug. I actually came from the gold camp. I've been into precious metals for like 10 years. Once I figured out what US dollars was, it totally changed my life. And that was about 11 years ago. And if I could, I'll tell you about that. That's
explain what the US dollar is. And I see a book behind you. That same book is in my kids' classroom in homeschool. Yep. And kind of explain what the dollar is and how that book relates to what the dollar is.
Whoa. So this is, the kids' book from Tuttle Twins. Fantastic book. The whole series is awesome. Cartoon books. I mean, I'm not affiliated with these people at all, but they communicate truth to kids. And it's marketed to parents for kids, but a lot of parents would benefit greatly. A lot of Americans across the country would benefit from reading this book. This one's Creature from Jekyll Island. Obviously, it's tiny. The real Creature from Jekyll Island is a very thick book, which I highly recommend. Get an audio book, listen to it in the car. I will warn anyone listening, though, if they're a big constitutional patriot like I was, and I still am, learning the truth about the banking system, it's painful because it really kills some of your patriotism. I love the Constitution of this country. I love this country. I love America. I came from Canada after 20 years. I can never go back. I just love the freedom here so much, or the idea of it anyway. The problem is we have a banking system that has overtaken our government. It's overtaken every aspect of our life. It's overtaken the world, and it's not American. It's not constitutional at all. If you learn about the dollar, learn what it is. It is a very corrupt, inflationary system that benefits rich elites in a banking system who own these banks, whoever they are. It's not the government. People think that the government owns the Federal Reserve, but you read The Creature from Jekyll Island, and you'll quickly learn that the Federal Reserve is not federal, and they don't have anything for reserves. The dollar is basically a counterfeit currency, just like the euro, the yen. And for the first time, I think, in human history, all the monies in the world are fake. They are based on nothing. It wasn't always that way. But since 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, it really wrecked any idea of sound money. And sound money is absolutely critical if you're going to have a sound society, a moral society. The money is like the nervous system of a society. If you got bad money, you're going to have bad society. It bleeds over to so many problems. It leads to endless wars. It leads to poverty. It's a system of debt and death. And if I could recommend a website for people to check out, WTFhappened in1971.com. I don't know if you know it, but if you want to understand why both parents have to work, why we have more tent cities than ever in our cities, why we have drug problems, why we're less free, why we have less liberty than we've ever had before, check out that website, WTF Happened in 1971. And that is when we went off the gold standard. That's the secret. But it shows you in charts and graphs how many things have gone wrong and how our money has been failing us ever since. So if you're like saving dollars, you are losing money. So Bitcoin is one method of many to escape that system and save in something that's deflationary, that's going to go up in value forever. Like, there's really, I could be wrong. I should caveat everything I'm going to say. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not even an economist. I'm just a dude who loves Bitcoin. I love the idea of Bitcoin, I should say. So I don't know if that answers the question.
As we're recording this, gold is at an all-time high. It's about $2,700 and some change dollars. And in the 1970s is when gold started running up. And the best way to think about gold and the dollar is, let's say in the 70s you wanted to buy a house and it cost 10 gold coins, or it cost, let's say, $50,000. Today you want to buy that same house, it would be, let's say, $150,000 or the same 10 gold coins. The gold is the same value throughout time. It maintains a purchasing power. That's what that idea is. It's the same amount of purchasing power from then till now. You should be able to take a gold coin and be able to buy a very nice man's suit. That would be around $1,000 today. But back in the 1800s, one gold coin would also buy you a very nice men's suit. But the dollar amount would fluctuate from time to time. And right now, the reason gold is so expensive, the same reason why Bitcoin is so expensive, is because the dollar is becoming worth less and less until it becomes worthless.
Absolutely. So I brought some props, and I got the gold coin here. I brought
awesome.
This is an ounce Canadian maple. This thing, like you say, it's $2,800 today to buy this thing. 10 years ago, it was $1,400. 10 years before that, it was $400. And let's go back 50 years. This was $35 50 years ago, and it was $35 all the way from 1934 all the way to 1970, 71. And then the dollar was based on this. It was $35 to an ounce. And for every dollar that was in existence, every $35 would be an ounce at the Treasury. And that ended in 1971. And it's really interesting. And if you read The Creature from Jekyll Island, you'll learn that basically countries around the world stopped trusting us. They saw us doing the butter and I forget the welfare programs, the social programs of the 1960s and the Vietnam War. We were spending way more money than we had in the coffers. And U.S. dollars since 1944, after World War II, we've been the reserve currency. So countries around the world store U.S. dollars for international commerce. And everyone understood that $35 been announced. So if I'm France and I've got X amount of dollars, that means I have so much gold stored in the United States, and I can redeem these dollars anytime at $35 an ounce. But in the early 60s, I think it was Charles de Gaulle, he was starting to get fishy of this and said, I don't think these Americans, I think they're lying to us. I don't think the Treasury has that gold. So they said, here's the dollars, we want our gold back. And since then, Germany has done it. Lots of countries around the world who owned dollars wanted to get gold back for those dollars. And then famously in 1971, Nixon went on TV, primetime interrupted television, I think it was August 1971, and said, we're going to take action against these people speculating against the dollar. We're going to protect the dollar. So I'm going to end the convertibility of dollars into gold, and effectively took the gold backing. So the dollars are not backed by anything anymore. The dollar has value only because people used to think it does, and we're still carrying on that. 50 years later, there's still a lot of people today that believe that dollars are backed by gold, and they're absolutely not. If they were, they'd be worth a lot more, you know. And this isn't the first time the government has lied about how much gold they had, or it's not the first time they've defaulted on outstanding dollars. It was 1933. Before that, gold was $20 an ounce, and then they banned it. They said, everyone who has gold, you got to turn it in, and we're going to give you $20. We'll give you a $20 note. You give us a $20 gold coin, and then once they got all the gold, if you don't do it, you'll go to jail or get a $10,000 fine. If you don't turn in your gold. And then the next day, what do? They revalue gold at $35 an ounce. Basically stole purchasing power, economic value from everyone who turned in their gold. And back then it was a very different culture. A lot of people still probably trusted their government and stuff, but yeah, I don't think that's going to happen again.
No, we know better nowadays. And there's this interesting thing that every time a currency changes, whoever's holding that currency loses value, loses purchasing power. Just like you mentioned, when they revalued it, so they took your ounce of gold, they gave you 20, and now they said, well, it's worth less than $20. It's now worth $30. So it means each dollar can buy you less because it takes more dollars to equal the same amount of gold.
Yeah, I'm personally like on a crusade against the U.S. dollar. I am not a fan. I can show you some more props. I mean, again, I'm pro-American, but the U.S. dollar is not American in my mind. We trade these things. I got a reserve note in my hand. You look at the top of it. It's got a green seal, Federal Reserve note. Note means debt. It's printed from nothing. They gave it to us. They charge us interest to use it. They got to print more and give it to us. It's a system that doesn't work. And it was probably 10, 15 years ago when I was working for the government and I was laid off temporarily. I think it was sequestration or something. And I decided I'm going to take this time and learn about the debt and the deficit. And the more I learned, I couldn't believe it. I had it was a massive event in my life in 2013, I think it was, when I learned how dollars work. But going back to this dollar, I mean, all these dollars we carry in our wallets, I know it's not very much anymore because we've gone digital, but these things are filthy. I mean, they're filled with like cocaine and feces. They're just awful. They weren't always like this, though. If you go back in time, I got another one here with the blue seal. This is from 1935, and on the top of it, it says silver certificate. And the really cool thing, it says $1 payable to the bearer on demand in silver. $1 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. So if you look at our history and you look at the definition of what a dollar is, it's not it's not what it is today. It's not debt. It's a real thing. And it's one of these. This is a Morgan dollar from 1921. It's about 3/4 of an ounce of fine silver. And these things were commonly traded for the first 150, well, from the beginning of our country to the last one issued was in the 1920s. And these are real constitutional dollars. To buy one of these today, you're paying at least $30 at the very minimum. That's because of the silver. And the cool thing about silver is it's antimicrobial, right? You don't have to carry these feces, cocaine-laden notes anymore. Back in the day, you carry these, and these actually, you wash your hands in them. I love to keep a little bit of silver in my pocket. I love the sound it makes, and I love the fact that it's clean money. And this that was printed from nothing is way different than something that people went out into the mines, into the mountains, and they expended blood, sweat, and tears to get this out of the ground. They put gasoline, oils, machines to melt them down, to craft them. There was intellect that went into the design of these things, and it's real money. There's value behind it. There's value that went into making that silver dollar. Whereas this, there's nothing. It's paper, and it's dirty paper. So, and the same thing with gold. Gold. Let me say one of the most important questions people can ask is what is money? Most people don't think about it. Most people just think it's just stuff I buy stuff with. But if you really dig deep and ask yourself, what is money? It's a fascinating question. It's one of those things that's hard to define. I don't know. Do you have an answer what you think maybe money is off the top of your head, or you want me to go with mine?
Let's go with yours. I've got something about money that we'll talk about here in just a bit, because I can imagine the questions going on in the viewer's mind. So once you're done with that, I got a comment about money.
Okay. Well, after thinking about it and reading some books, I came up with the conclusion that money is basically two things. One, it is a claim on someone else's time and energy. And something that's interesting about that, it can be a claim that's based on their future time and energy, or it can be a claim on their past time and energy. So today, all our money today is based on future claims on energy. It's all promises. It's all debt based. Every dollar that's in existence today comes from a loan of some sort. It is loaned into existence as debt, and we got to pay it back. But back before 1971, and the further you go back in time, the more so, it was that money was based on work that was already done. It was, you went out in the mountains and you put your time, blood, sweat, tears, and you mined that thing out of the ground. And it wasn't only your work. It was work of all the people that went into the mountains and looked for gold and didn't find it. All their energy is baked in to one of these ounces of gold. That's why it's $2,800, because it's $2,800 of time, energy, gasoline, mental power. A lot of stuff went into this. It's proof of work. When you have the ounce in your hand, it is proof that someone went out there and worked for it. And that's past energy complete. So when I give this to you for $3,000 worth of goods and services, it's because the energy's already went into it. It's done. It's past. And it's still, and you can keep on passing it forever. And that is what I would call sound money. So what is money? It's a claim on someone's time or energy. And the second thing is that it's communication. It is language. It is how we communicate value to one another. So it is akin to speech in a way. And this is all going to relate to Bitcoin as we go further. Right now, we have the government and banks and a lot of laws and a lot of surveillance on all the transactions we do. It's very hard to do anything online money-wise, and just about everything is online right now. They want to make it even worse. They're watching our Venmo transactions that are over $600. It used to be $10,000. It's just getting less and less. So... yeah, it's this. If you want to be free, if you want to have a free society, You and I, I'm sure, believe in the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment of our Constitution, that we should be secure in our person. We should be secure in our money as well and have privacy in our money. And if money is a form of speech, like I definitely say Bitcoin is, because it's code and there's encryption and it's the way we communicate, government shouldn't have anything to do with our money. So I'm a big proponent of getting people out of dollars, getting them into gold and silver. And I think Bitcoin's going to do way better than gold and silver, just because of the nature of what it is. Because it's just more powerful, and it can reach more of the earth, and it's easier to transact in. We're going to take money back from the state and restore liberty to people, not just here in America, but everywhere. I think I'm very hopeful. I'm really excited about Bitcoin because of that. So, what is money? Communication.
Yeah,
claim on energy.
I have a concern that I thought of while we were talking about this, that people may say, oh, isn't money the root of all evil? And I want to stop people who think that, because that is a misinterpretation, a misquoting of Jesus. He said, it's the love of money that is the root of all evil. And what's interesting, when you look at Hebrew, the word for money and the word for blood are actually the same word, which kind of goes along with what you were saying, that if you put your blood, sweat, and tears to pull gold out of the mountain or silver out of the mountain, then that is your blood, sweat, and tears. That is your blood. And for society to work, you have to have money circulating. For a body to work, you have to have blood circulating. And so there is this unique connection between blood and money. And that's why the love of money is the root of all evil, because if you love money more than you love people, what will you do? You'll squeeze the blood out of people to get the money.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That is beautifully put. I think the verse is in Timothy, maybe 2 Timothy. I'm not really sure. But the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. And I knew before we started this, I had to be really careful, because I often say I love Bitcoin, but I got to be careful. I am a Christian first. Christ is my king. He is the only and supreme authority in my life. And I don't want to say I love money. I do love the promise of separating money from government. I do love the idea of Bitcoin to restore freedom and liberty and or sovereignty to the individual. I think if you read Galatians, it was for freedom that Christ came. Chapter 5 of Galatians, all about freedom, truth will set us free. In John, I am a big proponent of liberty and freedom and restoring the Bill of Rights and constitutional freedoms to the American people, and to spread that around the world. But I don't think that's what we're doing right now with our fiat system. I think it's the biggest hindrance. But yeah, you don't want to love money, but money is not a bad thing. Money is not a bad thing. Without money, things can go really dark. Money is a tool that makes society happen. It makes development happen. It does wonderful things for, especially us in America. It's hard for, let me just lead in. It's hard for Americans to appreciate the need for different monies other than dollars, because we have had this exorbitant privilege of living here under all this wealth. We're the richest country. The whole world uses our dollars, and we really have benefited from that. But we need to check our financial privilege. It's not going to be like this forever. Someday, this dollar is going to be seen for what it is. It's going to collapse. And it is collapsing. Let's not say it's going to collapse. It is collapsing. It's been collapsing rapidly since 1971, more rapidly in the last 5 years, especially during, that whole illness thing that just happened and all the money printing they did then. Everyone can see it. Everyone's talking about inflation. It's the number one issue for most voters in this election, but so few people understand the solution. So that's my mission in life. I mean, one of my missions in life. Like I say, I am a servant of Christ Jesus, but I see Bitcoin and communicating the benefits of it as a ministry. And I especially want Christians to see the benefits of this and how they shouldn't be involved with these dollars. These dollars, it's debt and death slavery. It's just so hard for people to see it. But if you dig deep, I think you'll come to the conclusion I've come to. And I don't fault people for going to gold and silver first. It's a good option. I just don't think it's going to do as well because the last 50 years, the governments have had their thumb on the pricing mechanism for gold and silver. And they're able to lie and manipulate the knowledge of the supply of gold and silver. Like there's 8,000 tons at Fort Knox, but nobody's seen it for 50 years. There's been no audits of any kind. So do you trust your government? I know you don't trust our government, right? We have reason not.
I don't trust the politicians at all.
No,
yeah,
of course not.
I don't trust the leadership at all. I trust the Constitution, and we need to get back to
exactly. And anything can be money. You know, we're all in this mindset that dollars are the only money. It's the only money anybody uses is dollars, and it's kind of sad. But if you dig into my definition of what money is, you know, claim on someone's energy or time and its communication of value, you can really use anything as money. But then the next question is, what is the best money? And for that, you got to dig in and understand the characteristics of money. And there's a laundry list of those that most people don't think about. But to put it really quickly, money, it has to be a medium of exchange, right? It has to be a store of value. Hopefully a secure store of value, something that isn't going to fluctuate too much in value because of a war or because someone counterfeits it. You know, like, you know, the American Revolution, we had our Continental, I think it was called the Continental, our first currency. And the British Army, they just printed tons of it, right? And flooded the whole system with counterfeit, you know? So it wasn't a secure store of value. And it's got to be like a unit of account. You know, it's got to be fungible. Your dollars have to be the same as my dollars, you know, or silver or whatever. And if we can measure different things, I actually built a matrix of what makes good money. I have it here and I can send it to you, but I have 24 characteristics of what a good money is that I've just been thinking about over time. And I compare things like dollars in your hand, dollars in your bank account, gold, silver, oil, equities, cryptos, Bitcoin, livestock. You could use cigarettes or bottles of whiskey, ammo. Ammo is a good one, you know. The question is, how much economic value can you get into something small enough to actually transact in over time and space? And the best things for thousands of years has been gold. And now we have things that are better for transacting across space, like dollars. They're really good for transacting across space. I can send dollars to you across town, or dollars via a payment system like Venmo, Zelle, whatever, across the country in seconds for zero fees. That's a really good system. The problem is the dollars do not preserve value over time. So that's the problem. Yeah. So that's that.
So let's get into Bitcoin a bit more. So tell me what we've talked about it. I want to know how deep you want to go into this, but what it's done in the past and what you think it's going to do.
Well, the number one thing that gets people interested in Bitcoin is NGU, which is number go up, right? And if you trace Bitcoin from its beginnings in 2009, basically 2010-ish, nobody really knew anything about it until 2013, when it shot up to $1,000 from nowhere, really. It started for the first year or two, it was less than $1. I think the first real transaction was in 2011 for a couple of pizzas, 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. Yeah. But then in 2013, it made headlines around the world when it just shot up to $1,000. It was a hype cycle peak, and it crashed immediately down to around $200 after that. So Bitcoin has this really interesting 4-year cycle. And it's only been around since 2009 and 2013 and in 2017 and in 2021, we've had what Bitcoiners call a hype cycle peak, where the price just goes crazy, hyperbolic. It goes nuts. It goes up several multiples. And we're coming up on another hype year, which is 2025. So in 2021, we had it peaked at around $69,000. 65. It had two peaks. It was a weird year. It peaked in the spring of 2021 at $65,000, and then it lost half of its value like really quickly, and then it peaked again in November at 69,000. And before that, it went from 3,000 to 20,000 in 2017. And who knows, 2025, I mean, it could go. I'm betting on over 200,000. We're at 70,000 now. I'm betting 200,000 or more about a year from now. And it could go way higher. It could be a little less. I could be totally wrong. I don't know. We're talking about the future, right? So got a caveat with that. But if the cycle maintains, we're looking at a high valuation next year. And part of that whole 4-year cycle is that it crashes the next year. So 2026 will probably give people another opportunity to get in at cheaper prices. And when I say get in, I don't think people should be trading this thing. This is something you should own. Not if you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, you should learn about it first. Maybe just buy a little bit to get exposure. And once you see the number go up, maybe you'll be encouraged to learn about it more. But I wouldn't, don't take my word for it going up. I do think it's going to go up. But the most important thing is to learn about it first. It is very volatile. And that is normal for something that's as new as Bitcoin is. I mean, it's a brand new property, a brand new money. So it is, I think it's, yep.
So you just said that the Bitcoin is about 70,000 a coin. How do I buy a Bitcoin? I can't afford $70,000.
That's a fantastic question.
That was a bit of a setup.
Luckily for all of us who aren't, yeah, thanks. Luckily for all of us who aren't super rich, including myself, you don't have to buy a full Bitcoin. Every Bitcoin is divided up by 100 million Satoshis. And a Satoshi or a sat is like a penny to a dollar. So you get 1 million Satoshis, you get 1 Bitcoin. So you can go onto an exchange everyone knows Coinbase. It's not something I recommend, but it works. And you can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. You can buy a few Satoshis. I think in some places you can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. I think it's like 1,300 Satoshis, something like that. I buy $10 like every day, every single day. I have been for years, literally years. Once I figured it out, in 2021 after the last peak. I was too late for the last peak. I've been in Bitcoin since early 2016. I bought a whole Bitcoin for $400 in 2016, and I had no idea what I bought. I wanted to learn about it. I heard people talking about it. I bought it. It went to $700 6 months later. I sold half of it. I thought I was a genius. In hindsight, I was an idiot. But and I went on for another 5-6 years, or however long that is. 2016. I didn't get it till 2021. It takes time to learn it and to have confidence in it. Now I might sell a tiny bit of my Bitcoin in the hype cycle, but the vast majority of my Bitcoin I am not selling. I believe it has the potential. I think it's going to replace money. I think it's going to replace most of the valuation in gold. I think it could replace most of the monies we have in real estate. I mean, I'm a big bull. I don't think there's anything better than Bitcoin right now. And I'm ready for your objections. I'm ready for your challenges. There's a ton out there. And I love taking the challenges because I need to make sense of where I could be wrong. I need to, I hear lots of people say it's a bubble. It's the government's going to ban it, or it's going to be crushed, or by quantum computing or something like that. There's lots of these objections, and they're good objections. That you should have objections. And that's why I tell people to learn. I have answers to all these things, and they're not the best. They're not perfect answers. I'm not the most articulate. I'm not an expert in programming and cryptography and things like that. But I know enough to be confident that this Bitcoin's not going away. It can't be replaced like by another crypto. That's another thing. People talk about Bitcoin being slow and old tech, and this crypto is better. It's not better. It's not better at all. And I'd love to tell you why. Yeah, but if you don't have any and you're curious and you want to preserve your personal sovereignty, I would suggest learning about it, at least. Get an account with Strike or River. And all these are KYC platforms. They're third party. I wouldn't put a lot of money in until you learn what it is. And once you learn, then you start to take the next steps. You learn how to take custody of it, protect it, have it in your own possession. And then the next step is actually running Bitcoin, the software, and actually being part of the people that secure it and keep it safe from attack and safe from being wrecked, by governments or other cryptos. There's a lot to learn. Like I say, it was 5 years before I figured it out, and I'm 3 years into being a serious Bitcoiner, and I still know nothing compared to, there's still lots to learn, I should say, about the code, about the philosophy. I don't think you'll ever learn everything you need to know about Bitcoin. So
why will Bitcoin not be usurped by a different cryptocurrency?
Fantastic question. And this is one of the things that kept me out of Bitcoin for 5 years. I was like, some other cryptos is going to come along and it's going to be better. It's going to be faster. It's going to, the difference is it's decentralization. It's who runs it. So all these cryptos that are out there, and there's thousands of them now. I think there's like 15,000 or 30,000 of them. Basically what these people do, or that start these up, they take Bitcoin or a version of Bitcoin, they change it a little bit, and they centralize it so that it's running out of their basement, or it's running out of some office in Austin or San Francisco or Russia or anywhere. Anyone can start up a crypto and say, hey, invest in my crypto. And because it's low volume, the prices of some of these cryptos can go through the roof overnight. Of course, they all always crash. They're all pump and dumps for the most part. I mean, there's a few that stay in the top 10 and they're strong because they got really good looking white papers. They got celebrities behind them. But basically, they're Bitcoins with bells and whistles, but they don't have the people. They don't have the network in the background. Bitcoin is different because you and I can spin up a node on an old computer, a Raspberry Pi, an old laptop, and we can run the code. And Bitcoin exists on what all these things called full nodes. And there are thousands of them around the world. Who controls Bitcoin? I control Bitcoin. You can control Bitcoin. You can go buy a Raspberry Pi. You can go buy a little server and put Bitcoin code on it. And all of a sudden, you have a full copy of every Bitcoin block transaction that has ever happened in your house. And the vast majority of these full nodes are hidden on dark web. They're hidden behind the Tor network. So nobody even knows you're running the code. So if a government wanted to ban it, they would have to find all these nodes that are hidden behind Tor encryption and shut them all down. But they don't even know where they are. I could be running a code. Maybe this thing right here behind me is a Bitcoin node. Maybe you can see it, making blocks and verifying transactions. But no, and maybe I'm doxing a little bit here. whatever. You can spend a node for $300 of old, like brand new on a Raspberry Pi. All you need for storage space is a terabyte hard drive. 1 terabyte hard drive. I think Bitcoin, the whole history from 2009 to now, is under 700 gigs. There are small blocks of data transactions, very low volume. So you can have very underprivileged people around the world running old computers, verifying transactions, and having a copy of Bitcoin. These other cryptos, not at all. They are, some of them require mainframes. They're highly centralized. Government wants to shut them down. The SEC wants to shut them down. They can go right to their doorstep, and most of them are public identified. Like, who's the president of Bitcoin? There is no president of Bitcoin. Where's the central office of Bitcoin? There is none. All these other cryptos, there's an office somewhere, and they can be shut down. So once you start on your Bitcoin journey, get some, take possession of it, get a hardware wallet, and then the next step is to run a node, and perhaps you might even get into mining, getting a mining node. That's really how Bitcoin works. We have miners around the world that they package all these Bitcoin transactions into blocks every 10 minutes. And every 10 minutes, once they solve this hashing function, they unlock a block that's full of transactions like between you and me. And then that transaction gets put on the blockchain, or the time chain, as the inventor Satoshi called it. And you can see that right behind me here. In fact, there's a website here called mempool.space. And anybody can go on it, and anybody can see the entire history. All those blue blocks behind me, those are blocks that were just added to the blockchain. And each one of those blocks is about 2 megabytes in size. And they have anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 transactions between people on them. There's no names. It's all like anonymous. And this green block right here, it's constantly changing. That's the block that the miners are working on right now. And once they solve it, about 10 minutes, that green block, which is also right here, the small one, will move over to the completed ones and be added permanently to the blockchain. And this line of blue, purple blocks, it goes all the way back to 2009. And that is where all the Bitcoin is stored. And every node has a full copy. So if anyone asks you, where's your Bitcoin stored? It's not on your wallet. It's not here or there. It's on the blockchain. And where's that blockchain? The blockchain is on thousands of nodes dispersed all around the world, most of which are hidden. It's a beautiful code. There's nothing like it. It's an incredible invention. Yeah. So where do you want to go with that?
Okay, so I think you're kind of alluding to this, and I'll see if I can put it together in words. But basically, Bitcoin is built on a mistrust of everyone. And so to do a transaction, I have to look at this ledger, that ledger, and the other ledger on all these different computers. And they all have to agree. And if one of them doesn't agree, that one gets rejected. So it's difficult to counterfeit this. But then the next question is, okay, what if I can get a quantum computer that can have as much computing power that is available in the world right now? And I could have more ledgers that make the real ledgers look fake.
You cut out a little bit there, but I think I got what you're saying. So every node has a copy of the ledger, and they have to agree. And every 10 minutes, my node updates with the extra block. And every transaction in that block has to be, it's verified by my copy of Bitcoin. If it's not a legitimate copy, if there's any cheating, if there's like a double spend, or someone sending Bitcoin from one spot to another spot, but it didn't exist in the original spot, my node, along with all the other nodes in the world, will just reject it and say that transaction is no good. You can't put that in the block. You miners, you can't put it in the block. It gets thrown out. So all the Bitcoin that's on the blockchain is absolutely verified by thousands of nodes, all agreeing. And all these nodes, if there's a change to Bitcoin, there are improvements every once in a while. They're called I think it's Bitcoin Improvement Proposals, BIPs, and they're numbered. And every time a developer comes with it, all of us nodes basically can agree to it or not agree to it by updating our software. If we update and we agree to it, and these are all soft forks, like you don't have to upgrade. Like anytime the code it's proposed to change it in a dramatic way so that it makes it incompatible, that's called a hard fork. And none of us are going to go for that. None of the nodes. It happened in 2017 where Bitcoin Cash and a few other Bitcoins or people that wanted to change the code and make it faster and cheaper, they tried to change Bitcoin fundamentally by making these blocks bigger. And when they did that, it barred a lot of poorer people from running nodes. So the vast majority of nodes said, no, we're not going to split. We're not going to go to your version of Bitcoin. We're going to stay on the original one. It was called the Block Size Wars of 2017. The small blockers won, and they're basically people who wanted small blocks so we could have older computers running it. And these big blockers were mostly miners, big companies, possibly governments, people who had a financial interest in taking control of Bitcoin away from the people like you and me. And they lost. Bitcoin Cash, you look at it today, it's one of these cryptos. It's not worth at all what Bitcoin is. And most of the cryptos kind of came from that sort of process. They wanted something more centralized, faster, bells and whistles, but it's centralized. And the one thing about money is you want it to be resilient. You don't want anyone to just be able to change it. Bitcoin has had small changes since its inception in 2009, but for the most part, you can send me Bitcoin from 2011 and my node will process it and accept it. Nothing's changed. It's another beautiful thing. To change Bitcoin, you need 50% of the nodes to agree to a really big change. And even if the minority doesn't want to change, that will end up in another fork, the original fork. And that might be the true Bitcoin, the ones that don't change. So if the government wanted to spin up a bunch of nodes and do a 51% attack, they might be able to keep the name Bitcoin and change it to some other fork. But anyone paying attention will be like, I'm not changing. I'm sticking to the old one. And even if it's the 49%, we're the ones that are not forking. That's where people are going to go. That's where the value is. It's the Bitcoin that's controlled by the people. And I don't think the government or anybody has the resources to launch a successful 51% attack anymore. The time has passed for that. Bitcoin is secure and it's only getting more secure. It's only growing. It's only grown for years. Yeah. So,
So you're saying it's resistant to hostile takeover?
Very, very resistant. More resistant than anything. And that is the issue with cryptos. They are not resistant at all. They're in an office somewhere. They can be changed. Even if you look at Ethereum, for example, the number 2 crypto in the world, it's hard forked many times. It's changed so much. And over time, their dominance of the crypto market has just gone down and down, gone down and down and down. The value has gone down. Just a couple of years ago, they changed it from a proof of work system. We talked about proof of work. It's like gold mining, right? You put energy in. They changed it to a proof of stake model, which I don't think we've really talked about that yet. But fiat is a proof of stake model. Whoever has the most fiat dollars, they have the most influence on our elections, our lives, everything, right? And they kind of moved Ethereum, and many cryptos are proof of stake. Whoever has the most of the coin gets the most say. That's not the case in Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, whoever runs the nodes have the power. And you can run a node, I can run a node, people in Africa can run a node, and they do everywhere, and they're hidden. It's amazing. It's very censorship resistant. And today we're talking a lot about speech and censorship. Bitcoin is super censorship resistant money. It can't be frozen. Your dollars can be frozen. A couple of years ago in Canada, we had all those truckers protesting the shot. And government just froze their bank accounts. Even if you just sent money to people like in support, if you send a donation to someone, all of a sudden your bank account gets frozen. They can't do that with Bitcoin. They can do it with exchanges. So like if you have Bitcoin on Coinbase or some other place, the government could say, hey, this person's account, you need to freeze them. So that's why people need to take the next step and actually withdraw that Bitcoin to their own custody. Once it's in your own custody and you're the only one who knows the keys to that Bitcoin, there's no stopping you. Nobody can take that from you. So that makes Bitcoin borderless, inconfiscatable. It's really going to change the world. Can you imagine if everyone had money that you couldn't steal? Like just think about it. Money that people can't steal. What does that do for people in the third world who live in huts and have dirt floors? They live in a village, but they have a cell phone, and they can access the money through the cell phone. But if you give them dollars, they have nowhere to put them, and they can't even open a bank account because of the fees associated with that. So another great thing to learn about is El Salvador. A beautiful Bitcoin story. El Salvador's transition from the most violent country in the Americas to the most peaceful country in the Americas, the safest country, safer than Canada. The murder rate is dropped to nothing, and there's hope there for the first time. What changed? There's a president there, Nayib Bukele, and in 2021, he made Bitcoin legal tender currency of that country. First country in the world to do it, and that country has done an incredible turnaround. And it's a beautiful story. If you look at the history of like Bitcoin Beach, it's worth YouTubing. A bunch of Americans going down there. They just want to surf. And then they start a local economy of Bitcoins, getting people, paying for food and lodging, getting the locals to accept Bitcoin. And then the locals seeing the appreciation and value of this Bitcoin that can't be printed away like dollars. The currency before that was dollars, ever since their civil war in, I think, 2003. I think they've been using the dollar since 2003. But El Salvador was wrecked by civil war in the 80s and 90s, destroyed economy, all the the gangs that came to America all from El Salvador. That's stopped. We're not seeing El Salvadorians come to America anymore. The MS-13s and all that. That's changing. People are migrating back, and Americans are expatting there. And people all around the world who are Bitcoiners are going to El Salvador because they can use it tax-free, and they support innovation in this market. So I think El Salvador is a beautiful story. It's worth people looking into. It might become the Singapore of the Americas or the Switzerland, over time. And what does our government say about it? What does the IMF say about it? They have nothing but condemnation for both the president and that country. It's really sad, and that's all motivated by fiat dollars. It's all motivated by the central banks, who are not on our side. I would argue that the central banking is probably the most evil thing going on. Besides sin itself, central banking is probably the most evil entity on the planet. They are the money changers of Jesus' time in the temple. They were taking advantage of people bringing their sacrifices. Those same people are the ones running the banks today. They've been running the banks for 500 years, and they were running something else before that. But they create money out of nothing, and they charge us to use it with interest. It's a sick system, and I think it's coming to an end. I think Bitcoin is the one thing that can put it to an end. And my hope is that my friends, my families, hopefully Christians in general, Americans who love liberty, will learn what sound money is, investigate Bitcoin, and defund this old system by storing their blood, sweat, and tears in Bitcoin instead of dollars. How's that?
I think that's wonderful. I think it's a great place. I think it's a great place to wrap up too. Jay, where can people get more information for you if they want to follow you?
So I'm on Twitter or X. You can find me as Bitsader, Bitsader. That's, that's an easy way to find me. I'd also encourage people who want to learn to look up the Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Amos. He's an economist, Lebanese guy, wrote the book, Bitcoin Standard, has a great podcast, YouTube channel. Check out Bitcoin University by Matthew Cratter. Fantastic YouTube channel. There's a video every single day talking about fiat and Bitcoin, how Bitcoin is a solution to everything. Let's see. There's so many places to learn. Swan Bitcoin on YouTube. Incredible channel. Just every day they've got videos about Bitcoin. And so, yeah, check me out on Twitter. But I mean, I'm the least of the Bitcoiners. There are so many great resources. Michael Saylor. I can't believe I almost forgot Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategies. Him and Mark Moss, they're the ones that helped me in 2021 get off the crypto bandwagon and go Bitcoin only with a little bit of gold and silver, just in case the lights go out. You want your gold and silver. But yeah, Bitcoin is hope. It is I think it's the greatest invention of our time. I think it's going to do what electricity did 100 years ago. It's going to do what gunpowder did 500 years ago. It's going to change the world. And this is our opportunity to front run governments and corporations getting it. But that time is ending. It's getting short. So learn what you can and get some exposure, learn about it. I'm not a financial advisor. It's not financial advice. But hey, it doesn't hurt to learn and to get some exposure. And I love your work too, by the way. I just watched or I just listened to your last podcast, and I recommend people stay with your podcast too. It's fantastic. Was it the Nazarene Project? That was awesome. Really cool podcast. Love listening to it. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a good one. That was a pretty amazing project what he did.
Great. Yeah. So I could probably talk all day about this stuff. So if we got to terminate, well, maybe now's a good time. But I'm open to discussing again sometime.
Yeah.
Whatever you like.
Well, Jade, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. God bless you and your work, and keep doing it. Keep spreading the news, and we'll talk again sometime soon.
I really look forward to it. I'll see you in church anyway. Right? Probably. Wherever that is.
Yeah, we'll talk to you there.
All right.
For sure.
Have a good one, Doctor.
Right.
Sam.
All right.
You too.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Just a reminder for everyone out there, duty uniform of the day, the full armor of God. Let's all make courage more contagious than fear.